I destroyed my best friend's life for success, but was it worth losing myself? The night I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, looking down at the sprawling, glittering city that was my kingdom, the only thing I felt was the icy, familiar dread of a profound emptiness. I'm Ethan, 36, and I climbed to the very top of the corporate world by ruthlessly destroying the one person who trusted me implicitly. Now, I have everything I ever chased, but I lost a single thing that mattered, the ability to recognize the man looking back at me. Our story began simply, fueled by cheap coffee and boundless ambition in a cramped, freezing garage. Marcus, 36, was my best friend since childhood, the kind of friend who knew the silent language of your exhaustion and the secret flicker of your wildest dreams. He was the visionary, the true genius behind Aether Labs. Marcus saw the future of machine learning, I saw the roadmap to conquering the market. He was the chaotic, brilliant fire, I was the meticulous, grounded structure. We were two halves of an unstoppable whole. We spent 5 grueling years building our company, pouring every ounce of our youth, savings, and sanity into that dream. We slept on couches, ate ramen, and endured endless rejection, all for the singular belief that our technology would revolutionize an industry. We promised each other that we would do things differently. No corporate sellout, no sacrifice of ethics for profit, and above all, no betrayal. Our friendship was the core operating system of Aether Labs, more vital than any line of code Marcus wrote. My role was the closer, the one who navigated the savage landscape of venture capital. I was the one who smoothed over Marcus's uncompromising idealism, translating his complex vision into palatable business language. I protected him from the sharks, convinced that his purity of purpose was the company's most valuable asset. Until it became its greatest vulnerability. The crisis hit us at the 5-year mark. We were brilliant, but broke. We were days away from defaulting on our payroll, and the bank was refusing further extensions. We had reached the critical juncture where the technology was proven, the traction was real, but the runway was zero. We needed a massive investment, a final, decisive injection of capital to take us from the garage to the global stage. That's when Mr. Thorne, 55, entered the picture. Thorne was a titan of private equity, known for his ruthless efficiency and his staggering success rate. Securing a meeting with him was a miracle, securing his interest was a godsend. He loved the technology, he saw the billion-dollar potential, but he didn't like Marcus. Thorne didn't demand a change in the code, he demanded a change in the ethos. Marcus's core principle, that our AI tools must remain open source for educational institutions, clashed violently with Thorne's predatory business model. Marcus refused to budge, defending his vision with a passion that Thorne perceived as immature and dangerous. The final meeting was a disaster. Marcus, exhausted and rigid in his idealism, flatly rejected Thorne's proposal to proprietary license the core algorithm, calling it a betrayal of our founding principles. Thorne simply smiled, a cold, predatory expression that promised ruin. Later that evening, Thorne called me alone. His voice was smooth, offering a clear, chilling ultimatum. He respected my business acumen. He saw my loyalty. He knew I understood the reality of the market. He would fund the company, giving us everything we needed and more, securing our future and my ultimate personal wealth, but on one non-negotiable condition: Marcus had to go. Thorne said Marcus was a liability, an idealist who would eventually sabotage the company's valuation. He told me, you can save your friend's idea and make it the billion-dollar success it deserves to be, or you can save your friend and let his stubbornness kill the company. The choice was a physical weight in my chest, a crushing pressure that kept me awake for 3 days. My mind was a battlefield between the years of shared ramen and the glittering promise of global success. I kept telling myself the same lie: I was saving Aether Labs. I was saving Marcus's creation from Marcus himself. He was too pure, too good for this brutal game. I would take the necessary wound, become the villain, and ensure his vision survived, even if his involvement did not. My loyalty, I convinced myself, was to the dream, not the dreamer. The execution was clinical, devastating, and entirely my doing. I used the fine print of our founding documents, clauses that Marcus hadn't even read, trusting me implicitly to handle the boring legal stuff. I called an emergency board meeting, a board comprised only of Marcus and me, and a new, pre-vetted legal counsel provided by Thorne. I presented the documents. I used the corporate leverage I had meticulously built up over the years. I told Marcus that the investors demanded a single executive vision and that, for the sake of the company's survival, he had to step aside. I offered him a generous buyout, a sum that would guarantee him financial comfort for life, calling it a reward for his genius. Marcus didn't yell, he didn't rage, his face simply went slack, a profound look of bewildered pain that was far worse than any anger. He looked at me, not as a business partner, but as a brother who had just driven a knife into his back. You're not saving the company, Ethan, he said, his voice flat, utterly broken. You're saving your bank account. He refused the buyout. He said taking the money would legitimize the betrayal, that the real value was in the dream, not the dollars. He walked out of that garage, the same garage where we swore those impossible oaths, leaving behind his desk, his code, and the remnants of our friendship. The last thing he said to me, standing in the doorway, framed by the blinding morning light, was the line that haunts my sleep to this day: you took my success, but you stole my future. I watched him go, feeling the cold, hard certainty of the contract I had just signed, a contract that exchanged my soul for success. The money from Thorne hit the account the next day. Aether Labs was saved. My conscience was incinerated. What would you do in that situation? Choose the ethical collapse of the company, or choose the moral collapse of your own integrity? I told myself I was making the practical, necessary choice, but the lingering taste of ash in my mouth told a different story. Aether Labs exploded. Thorne installed me as the CEO, the new face of the company. We went from the garage to a sleek, glass tower in under 2 years. The valuation hit $10 billion, and I became a media darling, the ruthless, brilliant businessman who took a great idea and actually made it work. I had the private jets, the mansion overlooking the ocean, the awards, and the endless stream of flattering profiles. I had the success I had chased relentlessly. But the success was cold. Every press conference, every corporate acquisition, every champagne toast felt like a ritualistic sacrifice to the ghost of my best friend. I was surrounded by polished people who admired my title and my wealth, but none of them knew Ethan. None of them knew the man who loved sailing, who laughed until his eyes watered, who shared everything with one friend. I tried to use the money to fill the void. I bought faster cars and more expensive suits, attempting to dress up the empty shell I had become. But the silence in my penthouse at 3 a.m. was profound. I would stare at my reflection and see Thorne's cold, triumphant smile staring back at me. I hadn't become a powerful CEO, I had become Thorne's puppet, a man molded in the image of the system I once promised Marcus we would fight. My personal life collapsed around the core of my success. The few mutual friends we had slowly drifted away. They didn't need to say anything, their silence was a constant condemnation. I was now too rich, too busy, and too morally compromised to belong in their world. The isolation was complete. I realized that wealth only amplifies who you are, and since I had destroyed my identity, the wealth simply amplified the nothingness. I started obsessing over Marcus. I had a team track his career, justifying it as checking for competitive threats. The truth was, I needed to know that my betrayal had at least been worth it for him. I needed to see him thriving, successful in his own right, perhaps finally acknowledging that I had forced him onto a better path. The reality was crushing. Marcus didn't thrive. He was broken. The initial betrayal shattered his spirit, not just his bank account. He struggled to start a new company. The passion and trust were gone. He moved to a small, isolated town, taking a basic programming job for stability. He was safe, financially, from the initial shock, but his future, the future he was meant to have, was killed by my ambition. The money I offered him, which he never touched, sat in an escrow account, a festering reminder of my guilt. I would sit for hours, staring at the account balance, wishing I could trade every cent for one honest, shared laugh with my friend. One evening, 4 years after the betrayal, I was preparing for an important interview. The producer sent over a list of talking points, including a question about my defining characteristic as a CEO. The proposed answer was, uncompromising commitment to excellence. I looked at that phrase and realized the awful truth. My excellence was built entirely on compromise. I compromised my friendship, my loyalty, and my own ethical code. The loss of Marcus wasn't the biggest tragedy was the loss of Ethan. I had sacrificed the chaotic, passionate, ideal-driven man I was for the polished, predictable, financially secure CEO I became. I am a machine now, efficient, profitable, but utterly incapable of experiencing genuine joy or connection. Every decision I make is still filtered through Thorne's ruthless logic, even years after the deal was done. I can't even tell if my professional decisions are my own, or if they are simply the inevitable function of the cold-blooded persona I had to adopt to survive. I am forever trapped in the penthouse, haunted by the memory of a cheap, freezing garage. I traded a life of shared purpose for a life of solitary success. Was it worth it? Logically, statistically, monetarily, yes. Emotionally, fundamentally, ethically, no. I destroyed my best friend's life for success, but the real cost was losing myself to the character I had to play. I have everything, and yet I am poorer than the man sleeping on a couch in that garage 5 years ago. If you found yourself at the top, realizing the price you paid was your own soul, what would you do first? Sell everything and try to make amends, or accept the fate of permanent, gilded isolation? I am still trying to find the answer, staring into the dark reflection of a stranger in my $10 billion empire. What do you think? Was my decision a necessary evil to save the innovation, or was it a purely selfish act of betrayal disguised as ambition? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. If this story of the price of success and the corrosive nature of guilt resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to follow the next chapter of my haunted journey.